Today we're going to talk about creating a reading plan. This is going to be an important element in each chapter that you have, not only in this class, but in all the classes through your academic career. The reading plans that we're going to talk about deal mostly with academic textbooks, although what we say could be applied to any work that you are reading. It's much better to plan out what you're going to read before you just jump in and start reading, because sometimes if you have an idea about what you're going to read, it enhances your understanding. Your brain starts thinking about what you're going to be looking at, and even if you don't know the topic, it starts pulling from any prior knowledge that you might have to enhance your understanding of the topic. Okay? And of course the purpose of our reading plans is going to be to show you how to manage your time, because this is one of the most important things about reading academic texts. Sometimes our texts can be 30, 40 pages long per chapter. Other classes might run 90, 100, even 110 pages per chapter. With this in mind, we have to know that most of us don't have time to just sit down and read 110 pages. We have to set up times and manage our reading skills to where we can comprehend the information in a limited amount of time, because once again, if you're taking 3-4 classes per semester, then you're going to be reading, maybe 200 or 300 pages a week, and this is going to be an ongoing task where you have to set aside time to read critically, because a lot of the information you're going to be tested on is going to come right from the textbook. So then you have to determine a plan to attack each chapter or reading. And we'll go over the way we're going to do this over the next few slides. To begin, first and foremost, know the assignment. And I know this sounds trite or banal or cliche, but at the same time, I can't tell you how many times students have come to class and they've worked hard, they've read, they've done vocabulary, and they're all prepared except that they've read the wrong thing, which is a fine thing to do, but at the same time, in many of your courses, if you read the wrong information, the instructor is going to give you a 0, because it's just like you didn't read what you were supposed to do for the class. So knowing the assignment is the first thing that you need to look at. Then the second thing that I would say to do is to look at the assignment or the reading before you begin to read. Now what I mean by this is flip through it. As you're flipping through, you can see how many pictures, charts, graphs there are, because this is going to determine the length of reading that's going to be. You can look and see if there's any clues that are provided for you, if there's any words in bold print, objectives, how many sections it has, how many pages it is. This is an extremely important item to know. One of the things that has come to my attention is that at our CPT 101 class, the first chapter is about 110 pages long. And so the assignment for the first day is go home and read chapter 1, and the students think, oh, CPT 101, it's going to be a piece of cake. And when they go and they're overwhelmed by the amount of reading that they have to do for the first day of class. Now remember, if you have 110 pages to read and it's going to take you 10 minutes a page to read it, that's almost 1,100 minutes of reading that you're going to have, which is breaks down into many, many hours for you math majors there. How many pages is it? And how long is it going to take you to read a page? Say, for example, if you have a psychology book, about 35, 40 page chapter, 10 minutes per page, it's going to be about 400 minutes, which is the equivalent of 5 hours. And I think that many of us don't even have a 5-hour block that we can just sit down and read, and that's with no breaks. So we have to figure out how we can break down each reading assignment and make it manageable. Now in terms of pre-reading, this is much the same as you have in pre-writing in your English classes. Pre-readings where you come up with a plan, where you ideate how long or how much information is in there, how much do you know about the topic, how aware are you of the construction of the topic, are there a lot of charts that you need to know, are there a lot of tables, and other items that will help you set up some kind of a reading plan. This includes the front matter, and many chapters of textbooks nowadays have either a biography about the author. This might just be in the introduction itself, but they usually list some kind of vocabulary that you need to know, as well as objectives. And the objectives are what the author expects for you to learn from the text. As you're reading, if you can comprehend these objectives, then there's a real good chance that you will master each chapter and have the knowledge that you need to successfully indicate to the instructor that you have read and understood the material. The back matter is what we tend to concentrate mostly on as students. This is where we have the good old summary of what you've just read. Sometimes the author will provide key terms that may not have been in the vocabulary at the beginning. And there's some study questions as well as other items such as activities, exercises, further readings, things that the author thinks could enhance your understanding of the chapter. The caution we'll talk about now, and I'll mention again later, is many students, when they are pinched for time, simply read the summary, and hopefully they think that will give them all the information that they need to be successful in understanding the text. Whereas this may be the case in some areas. Remember that there's a lot of items that one can put into a text that would not be included in the summary that your instructor might want you to know. So now we're going to break down the chapter. Once you've figured out how long the chapter is, we're going to look to see if it's broken down into sections. Sections are groups of ideas that are relative to the chapter that give you an easy guidelines for setting up a reading plan. For example, if you were reading about the War of 1812, then the chapter might be broken down into sections of main battles. So you could read a few battles, take a break, read a couple more battles, take a break. Or it could be broken down year by year, or it could be broken into the various armies, whether the U.S. Army or the British Army. But what we're looking for in terms of the sections is a good way for you to establish points of taking breaks from reading. So instead of reading the entire chapter at once, if you have 7 sections, you could stop after each section and take a break, or you could read 2 or 3 sections and take a break. And this way you wouldn't be stopped in the middle of an objective. You would probably understand an objective before you stopped the reading. How many of them are there? We just talked about. And if indeed there are terms to be defined. Again, as we talked about before, the author doesn't know what you know and what you don't know. Sometimes he or she defines terms that you already know. Sometimes they take for granted that you already know what the term means, and so then it's up to you to figure out what it is. The questions. This is a good thing for you to look at, especially at the end of each section. If you can answer the questions that are asked to you, then there's a real good chance that you understand what you have read. Qualifiers are interesting points, or these are like transition words that will enhance your understanding or let you know as you're reading that there's more to come, or that you're near being finished, or how the section is going to be composed. Some transition words would be something like first, next, and our favorite one is finally, because that usually means that we are almost done, as we're almost done with this PowerPoint. Before you continue, especially at the end of each section, if you ask yourself, if I went to class and my instructor asked me to explain what I just read, how would I do this? And if you're able to do this thoroughly, then you have a pretty good handle or grasp of the topic that was presented to you, especially as it applies to the terms and questions that the author may have provided for you there. If you have problems with any portion of this, you should go back and refresh your reading with the sections that you didn't know as clearly. That doesn't mean you have to reread the entire section. I would just reread the sections that might be a little hazy to you, and be sure that you can thoroughly explain it before you move on. Therefore, as we head into the final slide here, establishing a writing plan provides clues about how long is each chapter, what do I need to know, what are the objectives, what are the terms, and indeed, how do I need to review this? Okay? The final thing that we're going to talk about with this presentation is the idea of composing a reading plan, because this seems to beguile many students. And a reading plan, again, is for your benefit. What's going to happen is eventually you're just going to automatically look over a chapter and compose a reading plan in your head. What we're going to be doing for the first couple chapters is composing our own reading plans, just getting used to the process of it. Many students tend to write books with a reading plan. I'm not looking for that. When I ask you for a reading plan, it's probably going to be only 3 or 4 sentences. One coherent paragraph is usually enough for your reading plan. So for example, what you would say is a paragraph about how you would read the chapter. If the chapter I ask you to look at is how many pages is it, you would write chapter 3 is 42 pages long. Okay, each page takes me about 20 minutes to read. So it's going to take me about 800 minutes or 10 hours? No, 12 hours to read this chapter. So I need to break it down into sections and to find out a reasonable amount of reading for me to do. Okay? Then are there any qualifiers? What are the objectives, questions, reviews, etc.? So at the end of 3 or 4 sentences, the chapter is 20 pages long. It'll take me an hour and a half to read. Here are some questions for consideration for me. You should have a good idea of how to plan or how to set up the way that you're going to attack the reading of this chapter critically. All right. With that in mind, if you have any questions or comments, let me know. Other than that, well, I'm going to probably send you to do a reading plan right now on the next chapter.